I warned my parents not to invest their entire retirement fund in my brother's business. They cut me off for 3 years and called me a bully. Now his business failed, they're bankrupt, and they called me asking for money. I, 30, male, warned my parents against investing in my brother's, 26, male business 3 years back because I knew it was going to fail. But instead of believing me, they got mad because they thought that I was pulling him down again and went ahead and invested their entire retirement savings into his business anyway. For context, he wanted to go into the event management business, but he had no experience in that field. Up until then, he had been switching jobs every couple of months and had been unemployed for almost 4 months when he came up with this idea. I tried to tell my parents not to invest, but they just accused me of being a bully. They were not completely wrong. When we were in middle school and high school, I used to make fun of him a lot because his grades were bad, and I used to call him a lot of names implying that he was stupid. I'm not proud of it, and after I left for college, I guess I did have some character development because I came back home and apologized to him. But of course, things didn't improve, and we were never able to get along well. The most that we could do was just be civil to each other. If I had any opinions about his life, I kept them to myself until he came up with the idea of starting his own event management business. My parents told me about it, and they said that they were planning on investing in it. I was fine with that, but then they said that they were going to go all in and invest their entire retirement fund in my brother's business. I thought they were just going to write him a check for seed money, but what they were planning on doing was a huge commitment, and quite a dangerous one. I'm a financial consultant myself, and I would never advise anybody to do what they did, because no matter how much they love their son, they have to look at the practical side of things as well. He had no experience, hadn't done enough research, didn't have much business acumen either, and was quite flaky. He had already proven to us by then by switching jobs so frequently, and he even planned on starting his business on a whim. So investing such a large amount of money was a huge risk, and I advised them against it. But as I said, they were not willing to trust me and my judgment because they thought I was just trying to drag my brother down and keep him from doing his best. I tried to reassure them that that was not the case. I was just being honest and giving them sound financial advice, but they didn't trust me. We had a huge fight. I tried to fix it as well by apologizing to them a couple of days later, but by then, they had already spoken to my brother about whatever I had said, and he had completely brainwashed them against me. So when I reached out to apologize, they told me that they did not want to speak to me anymore because clearly I was not a good brother, and I was not a good son either because I had always bullied him, and even now in my adult life, I couldn't just let him be happy. So now they are done with me out of support and respect for my brother, and they would really appreciate it if I stopped trying to contact them. It was incredibly hurtful, but I just stopped trying to get through to them because clearly they had picked their side. For 3 years, I didn't speak to them, didn't even try to reach out, and even though we saw each other at family events and stuff, we ignored each other. They seemed happy enough, and I could tell that my brother was thrilled that he finally had an opportunity to get back at me, but I didn't let it bother me too much. Anyway, last week my parents finally reached out to me. They told me that they had something very important to discuss with me and wanted me to call them whenever I was free to do so. I thought about it for a couple of days, whether I should call them or not, but curiosity finally got the better of me, and I did end up calling them yesterday. And long story short, that's how I found out that just as I had predicted, my brother's business had failed, and he was completely bankrupt. They had been racking up debt for the past 3 years trying to keep him in business, and now he had abandoned them because he couldn't even afford to help himself, let alone them. At least he had his girlfriend to fall back on, but they didn't have anybody, and now they were counting on me to bail them out. I thought about it for a couple of minutes, but then I told them that I had no intention of helping them out because I had my own life to think of, and they had made these choices themselves in spite of my warnings, so it was unfair of them to expect me to help out now. I wished them luck, and then I hung up, ignoring their attempts to try and get me to stay and hear them out at least for a while. After that, I felt very satisfied, but now I'm having second thoughts, and I feel like I'm being very cruel to them because they don't really have anybody else to help them out. I feel really weird, so AITA for refusing to bail my parents out? Update 1. Hey everyone. Thank you so much for all the comments. I was having a very difficult time processing everything that was happening because even though I had seen this coming, it was difficult to believe that my parents were actually going through this right now. Before these past 3 years happened, I actually had a good relationship with them, so that's why I was feeling incredibly guilty about refusing, but I can't help it. I need to look out for my own future as well. They gave me an approximate figure regarding the kind of financial help that they needed to get out of debt, and I didn't have that sort of money to spare. They are just going to have to figure something out for themselves because even if I wanted to help them, I would end up driving myself into a financial wreck, and I can't afford that. The most that I can do for them is give them my sympathy, but I don't think they want that. In the past couple of days after that phone call, They have not made any attempts to contact me, and I'm really grateful for that because I think it would make me feel even more guilty. I'm trying not to feel guilty though because I had done everything in my power to warn them, and they had never listened to me. They had cut me off for 3 years, and even though the situation is not completely black and white, I feel like it was a bit excessive. It's not like I had been bullying my brother even at the time this whole thing happened. By then, we had been staying apart for many years. We had become our own people, and I had apologized to him and tried to be good to him. So they should have known that it was coming from a place of concern, not from a place of contempt. I really don't understand why they chose to completely disregard whatever I had said. I guess I never will understand because I think anybody with half a brain wouldn't be so blinded and deluded and would know what's good for themselves. My parents clearly did not know, and now they are paying the price for it. I don't think that's my fault, and I'm going to try and feel less guilty about it because I really don't deserve this. Anyway, a lot of things finally make sense now because in the past couple of months, I hadn't seen my family at any parties, weddings, or events. They had skipped every single one of them, and everybody in the family had been talking, but they knew better than to ask me because even though it hadn't been made public, word did get around. I'm guessing it was my brother himself who made it known to everyone that my family was no longer on good terms with me. So people knew, but they were courteous enough not to bring it up or make a big deal out of it, and I'm grateful for that. I did find it very confusing when my family stopped showing up for stuff, and I did hear that they were going through some rough patch financially, but I never imagined that it would be as bad as this. Anyway, I just hope for the best, and I hope that they are able to get out of this. Update 2. Hey guys, it's been 2 weeks since my last update, and today my parents turned up at my house. It's a Sunday. I was not expecting anybody, so I was quite surprised to see them outside. They showed up with a bouquet of flowers and stuff, and they told me they were there to apologize to me. They said that they were not going to discuss anything else. They were just here to tell me they were sorry about everything that had happened and, most importantly, they were sorry for not trusting my gut and cutting me off for 3 years. Even though it was a bit suspicious, I didn't want to be the bad guy and keep them standing outside, so I invited them in. Once again, they apologized to me, and they told me that things had really fallen apart for them in the past couple of months, and they were having a hard time processing things. And on top of that, they regretted everything that had gone wrong with me as well, because I didn't deserve this. They said that they should have trusted me, and they regretted not doing that more than anything else. I tried to tell them it was fine, but after a while, my mom started sobbing and said that she really regretted how she had treated me, and said that both she and her husband had made a huge mess of things, and they didn't know how to take any of it back. I personally get really awkward around people who are crying, and I didn't know what to do, so I just tried to comfort her by saying that it was all right, that I was just glad that they had come to their senses and things like that. But it didn't help though. She just kept crying for a good 10 minutes, and she was mumbling something or the other under her breath that I couldn't make sense of. My dad is quite stoic, just like me, so he didn't say anything, but he did try to comfort my mom. After she was done crying, she started speaking about my brother. She said that she couldn't believe that he was being so ungrateful after everything he had received from them and had completely abandoned them. She sounded really bitter and angry and was on the verge of tears once more as soon as she started talking about him. I guess it was too much for her to even mention him, so my dad took over, and he started explaining everything that had gone wrong. And let me just say it, I had low expectations for my brother in the first place, but boy, has he managed to go even above and beyond that. Even in the beginning, when he first started his business, he made a bunch of terrible investments. Instead of working his way up, going slow and steady, he decided he was going to make everything as grand as possible. He rented this insanely spacious place for his office, hired more employees than he needed, and even decorated this place so lavishly that I don't think he even realized all this was going to cost him. And when they did not break even the way that he had expected, instead of stopping and taking stock of the situation, he just kept going. There was no pause button on this guy. He didn't understand the concept of prioritizing profits, and it was just a mess. And I have to say, I really don't understand how my parents allowed this to happen either. I can understand he didn't have the kind of business sense that they had expected him to, but the least they could have done was speak to him, get him to see what he was doing wrong, and tried to get him back on the right track. But my parents told me that they wanted him to think that they had faith in him, so they did not interfere in his business at all in spite of being his primary investors. I have no idea why they would do such a thing. It was just a really stupid move, and they were facing the consequences for it now. It's no big surprise that it failed, and they ended up neck-deep in debt. This was bound to happen. But I am surprised that my brother was able to find a girl stupid enough to take up his responsibility now. Apparently, these two have been together for the past 2 years, and she's helping them out with a place to stay and paying for everything that he needs. It's not a big deal for her. She comes from a pretty rich family, and they plan on getting married as well. I have no idea how her parents are allowing this because if my daughter got involved with a guy like this, I just wouldn't stand for it. But I guess nowadays, parents are just letting their kids do whatever they want. Anyway, my brother has been ignoring my parents for the past couple of months, and even blocking them a few weeks ago, which is when they decided to reach out to me. It became clear that they were not getting any help out of him, so they had no option but to come to me. And when I declined as well, they realized that they were left with no other options but to deal with this mess themselves. Since then, they've been doing whatever they can to put together the money that they need to pay off, but it just hasn't been enough. And when they said that, my dad asked me now that I had had some time to think, had I changed my mind about contributing or not. So I told them that I had not because, as I had mentioned in my previous update, I have a life to build ahead of me, and I don't want to waste any of my money. I'm sure that they will figure something out for themselves, but I don't have to help them out. And I guess I had a feeling that throughout this whole thing, while they were telling me everything that had happened, they were sort of building up for the big ask. I had already prepared myself for that mentally, so I was pretty ready to say no. Sometimes you just have to have your boundaries, especially when people who you haven't spoken to in 3 years come up to you asking for help. So when I declined, they were pretty disappointed, and I could see it on their face. My mom said that she really had been expecting me to change my mind by now because it was getting very difficult for them, and they really didn't want this to become such a huge deal that the other people in the family also found out, because that would be pretty humiliating for all of us. And she included me in that, all of us. So I told her that it wouldn't really be humiliating for me, because everyone in the family already knew that we hadn't been on good terms for quite some time, and they did not include me in the unit that was my parents and my brother. She seemed a bit shocked, so she told me that that was not the case, and I was definitely still a part of the family. I said that maybe I was, but at least the rest of the family members did not think of it that way, and they saw me as a separate person from the rest of them. That was all thanks to my brother, and I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure that he told people in the family that I was not in my parents' good graces anymore, and that's why we didn't interact with each other. My parents tried to tell me that that was just what I believed. It was not the truth, but I knew the reality, and I told them I didn't want them to reassure me of things that I knew were not true. Besides, that was not going to make me change my mind. I didn't care if the family was humiliated, but my future was more important to me. And unlike them, I knew I couldn't afford to throw away money trying to help them out. They had to do something on their own. I was not going to go out of my way to get them out of trouble. Then my mom started crying again, saying I didn't even care about them, and that she was really upset that both of her sons had turned out to be so heartless. My dad, being more reasonable, tried to tell me that this was really important to both of them. As soon as they could afford it, they would return all the money to me. But I really didn't think that it was going to be possible because even if I did help them out, my dad was already around 56 and my mom was 54. It would just not be possible for them to earn back all the money, save for themselves post-retirement, and also return the money that I had helped them out with. They just didn't have enough time for that, realistically speaking, and even if they did, it was not my lookout. So I told him that my mind was made up. I was not going to change it, and if that's what they were here for, to ask me for help, then they could just leave because I did not want to waste my Sunday arguing with them. He got very offended. He said that after everything that he and my mom had done for me and my brother, this was no way to treat them. And I really had to roll my eyes at that point because apart from paying for me to go to college, they really haven't done anything for me that was not required of them by the law. I went to public school, and even in college I was a scholarship student, so it's not like they had to pay my tuition in full either. And after I graduated, I got a job on my own, started working, saved up, and moved out on my own. And since then, I haven't taken even a penny from my parents. It's not like I'm not grateful to them for raising me to the best of their abilities. I am. But making it seem like they did me a favor was just a tacky move, and I really don't appreciate it when parents do things like this because it just cheapens everything. I could totally understand why they were disappointed with my brother abandoning them because, if I really think about it, they definitely had done more for him than for me. But I didn't think that they had any right to expect anything from me, and I even made that clear to them. So naturally they got very offended, and we got into another fight. But this time, they were under my roof, so I told them that I did not want to make things worse than they already were, so they really needed to go away and leave me alone because my mind was made up, and fighting with me was not going to help them. So after a while, they left, but they were still pretty unhappy about the situation. I can't help it though. I never committed to them that I would bail them out, so they really don't have any reason to expect me to do so. I'm sorry that this is happening to them, but it's really not my problem. Update 3. So it's been a month since I last spoke to my parents, and I just found out from a couple of my relatives that they have been talking absolute rubbish about me to everyone else. I ran into one of my aunts at the grocery store, and she told me all about it. Apparently, after their visit, they started running their mouths off about me to everyone else. Not just me, they also spoke a lot about my brother, but I really don't care about that. I think he deserves it, so that doesn't bother me. Anyway, about me, they had been saying that I was a terrible human being, and apparently, I rubbed their failure in when they tried to ask me for help. If you guys remember anything from my last update, I think it's pretty clear that that's not what I did. I did not bring that up at any point. I never would do that because I think it's really mean-hearted, and I'm not a person like that. Even if I don't like somebody, I won't do that. And that goes for my parents as well. So even though I knew that they had made a terrible choice, and now they were just facing the consequences of it, I did not rub it in their faces because I'm pretty sure they were having a rough time and regretting it as it is. That was punishment enough for them. I did not need to rub anything in. But just to make me look like the bad guy, they lied to everyone that I had done so. And on top of that, they also said that apparently, I was the one who had invited them over, and then I had insulted them and humiliated them before asking them to leave. Now, of course, that's also not true. I had not invited them over at any point. I don't understand why they would even say that because, in the past few years, I think everybody has seen me avoiding them at parties and gatherings. Now all of a sudden, just to put them down, I supposedly invited them over just to insult them? If I wanted to do that, I could have done that earlier as well, and I could have done that publicly. I think that would have accomplished my goal even better. And I think that that's why nobody is ready to believe whatever they've been saying about me, because if they really want people to believe it, they would have to make it believable and realistic at the very least. It feels like they're trying to invent an alter ego of me who is a terrible person, but that's not really me. And anybody who knows me even a little bit will be able to judge that for themselves, as my aunt did. Anyway, the point was that they had been talking about me non-stop to anybody who would listen. Now, most of the people in the family did not bother with it. They ignored the messages that my parents had been sending them. They had basically been telling everyone not to invite me to anything after this, because the family needed to put up a united front against the two of us and not speak to us. Most people were fine with not speaking to my brother, but they didn't want to cut me off because they did not believe that I had done anything wrong. But there were a few members of the family who wanted more gossip, who wanted to stir the pot, and they had been talking about me as well, just to add fuel to the fire and nothing else. So my aunt thought that it would be necessary for me to know what was going on behind my back, since that way, at least I would be able to take whatever action I thought was necessary. And I told her that I really appreciated how concerned she was for me because it showed me that even if my own parents went against me, at least the people who actually cared for me would always have my back. And for me, that was enough because, in the past 3 years, I had already learned to live without my parents and not to expect anything from them. So right now, not interacting with them and staying away from them and stuff, it's really not that difficult for me. But knowing that they were trying to turn the rest of the family against me, that really stung. While she had been telling me about it, I had been furious, and I was thinking about doing something about it. But by the end, even my anger had fizzled out, and it was just not worth it. They did not even deserve a response from me. That was how much I did not care. Because I knew that people like my aunt, sensible members of the family, were not going to believe any of this rubbish anyway. So why should I waste my energy trying to explain stuff to people who had already decided they were not going to believe me and people who were clearly not worth the time or the effort for me? Knowing that a few sensible people were on my side was enough. I did not need to prove it to anybody else. And I said that to my aunt, and she told me that that's exactly the kind of response she had expected from me, and she was really proud of me for dealing with this in such a dignified manner. After that, I came back home, and I've been thinking about it for a while, and I'm really disappointed with how my parents decided to behave, but I'm glad I did not allow my anger to get the better of me in the heat of the moment, because, like I said, some people are just not worth the drama. Update 4. So it's been 3 years since my last update. I have decided to post here today because, in the past 3 years, I have had no contact with my parents. So in total, apart from the few interactions I had with them following their phone call asking me to help them out with money and stuff, I've been staying away from my parents for almost 6 years now. And I can't say I miss them because I really don't. But recently, I found out from a couple of relatives that they decided to sell everything and move to Canada to stay with my uncle, my mom's younger brother. He was the one who had bailed them out the last time, and after that, they had stayed here, but had been cut off by the rest of the family, including me and my brother. Recently, one of my relatives bumped into them at the airport, and that's how we found out that they were leaving. So I guess things worked out for them after all, and I'm glad that I did not choose to help them because it's not like they really didn't have anybody else. They did. They just didn't want to ask anybody for help because they were too proud to do so. Anyway, I'm very happy that I made the choice because, looking back, I definitely would have regretted it if I had decided to loan them the money. A couple of months after that, I met my girlfriend. We started going out, and 6 months ago, we got married. Last week, I found out she was pregnant, and I couldn't have been happier. Financially, I'm stable, and so is she. And I highly doubt that I would have been able to be in this place if I had decided to help my parents out. So I guess all is well that ends well.